The vast emptiness of space stretched before Admiral Vraise as he stood on the command deck of the Velker. The flagship of the invasion fleet gleamed with polished metal and hummed with advanced technology. Through the panoramic viewing window, Earth appeared as a small blued, seemingly insignificant against the backdrop of stars. Status report. Vraise commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge. All systems operational, Admiral, replied his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kors. The fleet is in position, awaiting your command. Vraise nodded, his lips curling into a satisfied smile. For decades, he had led the Galactic Empire's expansion, conquering countless worlds and bringing them under Imperial rule. His record was impeccable, victory after victory, without a single defeat. This mission would be no different. And what about the humans? Vraise asked, studying the planet with a dismissive gaze. Intelligence reports confirm our initial assessment, Kors replied, consulting his datapad. They're fragmented, divided into nation-states that frequently engage in conflicts among themselves. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. They've barely begun to explore their own solar system. Vraise chuckled. Primitive species always fight among themselves. It makes our work easier. He turned to face the strategic hologram at the center of the bridge. It displayed their fleet, hundreds of warships, from nimble destroyers to massive dreadnoughts, all positioned to strike at Earth. The humans had no chance against such overwhelming force. What about their military capabilities? Vraise asked, more out of protocol than genuine concern. They have orbital defense stations and a small fleet of spacecraft, but nothing that poses a serious threat, Kors explained. Our scans indicate their weapons systems are based on projectile technology and rudimentary energy beams. There'll be no match for our shields and targeting systems. Vraise was about to respond when his communications officer interrupted. Admiral, we've intercepted some human military transmissions. They mentioned someone called Admiral Cole. He appears to be coordinating their defensive efforts. Cole! Vraise raised an eyebrow. Find out what we know about him. A moment later, a profile appeared on the main screen. Admiral Cole, a veteran of several Earth conflicts, known for his unconventional tactics and strict discipline. His image showed a stern-faced man with gray hair and piercing eyes. He looks like a worthy opponent, Vraise commented. But even the best tactician can't overcome a technological disadvantage. As Vraise studied the profile, a young officer approached with a concerned expression. Admiral, we've detected unusual resistance from the human outposts near Mars. They managed to destroy 2 of our scout ships before being neutralized. Vraise frowned. 2 ships. That seems unexpected. Yes, sir. And there's something else. The officer hesitated. Our long-range scans indicate significant movement behind the moon. It appears that a portion of their fleet isn't where we expected it to be. Hiding. Vraise scoffed. Let them hide. It won't save them. But a seed of doubt had been planted. Throughout his career, Vraise had learned to trust his instincts, and something about this situation felt wrong. Still, the Empire had never failed in a conquest, and he wouldn't be the first admiral to break that record. Prepare the War Council, Vraise ordered. We'll strike at dawn, Earth time. A swift, overwhelming attack will crush any resistance. As his officers dispersed to carry out his orders, Vraise remained at the viewing window, staring at the small blue planet. Despite his confidence, he couldn't shake the feeling that something unexpected awaited them. Hours later, in the war room, Vraise addressed his commanders. The holographic projections of captains and generals flickered around the table, all attention focused on the admiral. Our strategy is simple, Vraise explained, highlighting key orbital positions around Earth. The destroyers will neutralize their defense stations, while our cruisers target their military installations. Once their defenses are compromised, we'll begin the landing operations. What about their fleet, Admiral? Asked Captain Tovar, commanding the dreadnought Ironclaw. Their vessels are scattered and technologically inferior, Vraise replied dismissively. They'll be dealt with as they appear. By morning, humanity will kneel before the Empire. Most of the officers nodded in agreement, but Vraze noticed some exchanging uncertain glances. "Is there something you wish to say, Captain Loris?" Vraze asked, fixing his gaze on one of the hesitant officers. Captain Loris straightened her posture. "With all due respect, Admiral, the scattered resistance we've encountered so far has been more coordinated than expected. The humans seem to have anticipated our movements." "Coincidence," Vraze stated, firmly. "Or perhaps they're not as primitive as we thought. Either way, it changes nothing. Our forces are vastly superior. The operation proceeds as planned." The meeting concluded, and as the officers filed out, Vraze caught his tactical officer lingering behind. "You seem troubled, Lieutenant Kors." "It's probably nothing, Admiral," Kors replied hesitantly. "But I've analyzed the patterns of human communications we've intercepted. They're too calm, too organized for a species facing extinction. It's almost as if they were expecting us." Vraze finished the sentence. "Perhaps they were. It wouldn't be the first time we've encountered a species with rudimentary predictive capabilities." He placed a hand on Kors's shoulder. "But it won't change the outcome. The Empire always prevails." As Vraze returned to his quarters, he couldn't entirely dismiss the nagging doubt. Throughout his career, he had conquered worlds far more advanced than Earth. None had presented a significant challenge. Yet something about this mission felt different. The humans weren't behaving like a species on the brink of conquest. They were too composed, too prepared. "It doesn't matter," Vraze told himself as he prepared for the few hours of rest before the attack. "By tomorrow, Earth will be another conquest in the Empire's glorious history." Little did he know that the coming dawn would bring a revelation that would shake the foundations of the Galactic Empire itself. The attack began precisely at dawn, Earth time. Imperial destroyers emerged from hyperspace near Earth's orbit, immediately targeting the network of defense stations that formed the planet's first line of protection. Initial reports were promising. Several stations collapsed under the barrage of energy weapons, their debris scattering into space. From the command center of the Velker, Vraze watched with satisfaction as the first phase of the invasion proceeded according to plan. The humans' response seemed disorganized, with only a few ships rising to challenge the Imperial forces. "Too easy," he commented to Kors, who stood beside him monitoring the tactical display. "Their resistance is even weaker than anticipated." "Yes, Admiral," Kors replied, though his expression remained concerned. "But I find it strange that their main fleet hasn't engaged yet. Perhaps they're saving their strength for a final stand," Vraze suggested, unconcerned. "It won't matter. Advance the cruisers into position for the second phase." The order was given, and the massive Imperial cruisers moved forward, their weapons charging to target Earth's military bases. Victory seemed assured. Then everything changed. "Admiral," multiple contacts emerging from behind the moon. The sensor officer's voice was tinged with alarm. Vraze turned to the main display, where dozens of new signatures were appearing. "Identify. Human vessels, sir. But they're not like the others. These are larger, more advanced." Before Vraze could respond, another officer called out, "More contacts detected in the asteroid belt and near Jupiter's moons. They're surrounding our fleet." Vraze stared in disbelief as the tactical display filled with enemy signatures. The humans hadn't been disorganized. They had been waiting, positioning their forces for a coordinated attack. "Impossible," he muttered, but the evidence was right before his eyes. The human fleet struck with unexpected precision. Their ships moved with agility that defied their size, employing tactics that caught the Imperial forces off guard. What's more, their technology was far more advanced than intelligence had indicated. "They're using some form of stealth technology," Kors reported, his voice strained. "Our sensors can't lock onto them until they're almost on top of us." Reports of casualties began flooding in. A destroyer squadron ambushed near Mars. 3 cruisers disabled by weapons that somehow bypassed their shields. A dreadnought, the pride of the Imperial fleet, listing helplessly after its engines were targeted with surgical precision. "This can't be happening," Vraze said, his confidence evaporating as he watched his carefully planned invasion crumble. How could we have been so wrong about their capabilities? Admiral, the communications officer called out, we've intercepted a transmission between their vessels. I think you should hear this. A moment later, a clear voice filled the bridge. Phoenix Squadron, this is Admiral Cole. Phase 1 complete. Remember, this is just the vanguard. Their main fleet hasn't entered the battlefield yet. Silence fell over the bridge. The officers exchanged alarmed glances. What does that mean? Vraze demanded, though he dreaded the answer. What main fleet? Sir, Kors replied slowly. I believe they want us to think they have more ships in reserve. It's psychological warfare. Vraze nodded, clinging to that explanation. Yes, that must be it. A bluff to demoralize us. But even as he spoke, he wasn't convinced. The situation continued to deteriorate. The humans employed hit-and-run tactics, striking Imperial formations before disappearing again, exploiting vulnerabilities no one knew existed in the Empire's defense systems. Admiral, Kors reported grimly, we've lost contact with the Tyrant and the Relentless. The subjugator reports critical damage. Captain Loris. He hesitated. Her ship was destroyed with all hands. Vraze gripped the railing of the command platform, his knuckles white. This was supposed to be a routine conquest, another glorious chapter in his illustrious career. Instead, it was becoming a nightmare. Order all remaining ships to regroup at these coordinates, he commanded, indicating a position farther from Earth. We need to reassess our strategy. As the Imperial fleet struggled to regroup, the humans pressed their advantage. Their ships seemed to anticipate the Empire's moves, countering them before they could be executed. Hours passed, and the situation grew worse. What had begun as a sure victory was turning into a potential defeat, something the Empire had not experienced in generations. In the privacy of his ready room, Vraze faced the unthinkable. We're losing, aren't we? He asked Kors, who had become his de facto confidant in this crisis. The battle isn't over, Admiral, Kors replied diplomatically. But yes, we've suffered significant losses. Vraze turned to the viewport, watching as distant explosions marked the continuing battle. How could they be so prepared? How could they have technology that rivals our own? Perhaps our intelligence was flawed, Kors suggested. Or perhaps what? Perhaps the humans have been observing us for longer than we realized, learning our weaknesses, preparing for this moment. The thought was chilling. The Empire had always considered itself the apex of civilization, the most advanced society in the galaxy. The idea that a species they deemed primitive could have been studying them, anticipating their tactics, was almost inconceivable. Admiral, the communications officer's voice came through the intercom. We're detecting a massive energy signature approaching from the direction of Saturn. It's unlike anything we've seen before. Vraze returned to the bridge, his heart pounding. On the main screen, a formation of vessels appeared, ships of a design he had never encountered, moving with perfect coordination. It's their main fleet, someone whispered, the words hanging in the air like a death sentence. As Vraze watched, the human vessels unleashed a barrage of energy weapons that cut through Imperial defenses like they were nothing. Ships that had been the pride of the Empire were reduced to drifting hulks in minutes. This can't be happening, Vraze repeated, but the evidence was undeniable. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning. And then, a direct communication came through, displayed on the main screen. Admiral Cole, his expression stern and determined, looked directly at Vraze. Imperial forces, this is Admiral Cole of the Terran Defense Fleet. Your invasion has failed. Surrender now, or face complete destruction. Vraze stared at the human admiral, seeing in those eyes a resolve that matched his own in his younger days. This was no primitive species cowering before superior technology. This was a formidable enemy, perhaps the most dangerous the Empire had ever faced. What are your orders, Admiral? Kors asked quietly. Vraze looked around the bridge, at the faces of his crew, tired, afraid, confused. They had never known defeat, had never been prepared for it. Neither had he. Prepare the fleet for a tactical withdrawal, he ordered, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. We need to regroup and reassess. As the orders were transmitted, Vraze couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of the end for the Galactic Empire. The humans had not only resisted, they had revealed themselves as a force that could potentially challenge the Empire's dominance in the galaxy. And according to their own communications, their main fleet hadn't even entered the battlefield yet. Chaos reigned on the bridge of the Velker. Officers rushed between stations, desperately trying to coordinate the remnants of what had once been a mighty invasion force. The damage reports came in a relentless stream. Ships destroyed, thousands of Imperial soldiers lost, communication systems failing. Admiral Vraze sat in his command chair, his once proud posture now slumped, his eyes hollow as he tried to process the magnitude of their failure. The Empire had never known defeat, not in his lifetime. There were no protocols for this situation, no contingency plans for retreat. They had always been the conquerors, never the conquered. Admiral, Lieutenant Kors approached cautiously. The humans are advancing on all fronts. The Dominion and the Sovereign have been destroyed. The Indomitable is reporting critical systems failure. Vraze nodded numbly. Names of ships he had known for years, crews he had commanded, all gone in a matter of hours. And our escape route. Kors hesitated, and in that moment, Vraze knew the worst was yet to come. Sir, we're detecting a strange energy field surrounding our fleet. It appears to be interfering with our hyperspace capabilities. What? Vraze stood abruptly. That's impossible. No species has ever developed technology that could disrupt hyperspace. The humans have, Kors replied simply. We can't escape, Admiral. We're trapped. Panic began to spread through the bridge as the reality of their situation became clear. The Empire's greatest advantage had always been its ability to move vast distances through hyperspace, to strike without warning and withdraw when necessary. Without that capability, they were vulnerable in a way they had never been before. Sir, the communications officer called out, incoming transmission from the human flagship. Vraze straightened his uniform, determined to maintain dignity even in defeat. Put it through. The screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Cole. Up close, Vraze could see the determination in the human's eyes, a cold calculation that reminded him uncomfortably of himself. Admiral Vraze, Cole began, his voice level. Your fleet is surrounded, your escape routes blocked. Surrender now, and your surviving crew will be treated according to interstellar conventions of war. Vraze felt a surge of defiance. The Empire does not surrender. Then the Empire will fall, Cole replied calmly. You have 1 hour to reconsider. After that, we will show no mercy. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. What are your orders, Admiral? Kors asked quietly. Vraze looked around at his officers, seeing the fear in their eyes. They had joined the Imperial fleet expecting glory and victory, not this hopeless situation. Continuing to fight would mean their certain death. And for what? The pride of an empire that had sent them to their doom based on flawed intelligence? Prepare the surrender protocols. Vraze finally ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, unthinkable just hours ago. The mighty Galactic Empire, surrendering to a species they had considered primitive. It was the end of everything Vraze had believed in. As the surrender was transmitted, Vraze stood at the viewport, watching as human ships approached, their designs unlike anything in the Imperial database. They moved with a precision that spoke of advanced technology and superior tactics. How had intelligence missed this? How had the Empire been so blind? Admiral, Kors approached again. The humans have accepted our surrender. They're sending shuttles to board the Velker and other command ships. They want the senior officers. Vraze nodded, resigned to his fate. Prepare the honor guard. We will maintain Imperial dignity, even in defeat. As they waited for the humans to board, Vraze turned to Kors. In all my years of service, I never imagined it would end like this. Perhaps it's not an ending, sir, Kors suggested. Perhaps it's a new beginning for the Empire. A lesson in humility. Vraze considered this. The Empire had grown complacent in its dominance, arrogant in its assumptions about other species. Perhaps this defeat would force a reassessment, a recognition that the galaxy held dangers they had never imagined. The airlock cycled, and human soldiers entered the bridge, their weapons ready but not threatening. They moved with discipline, securing the area with professional efficiency. Behind them came Admiral Cole, flanked by his senior officers. In person, Cole was taller than Vraise had expected, his bearing that of a man accustomed to command. He approached Vraise with a measured step, studying the Imperial Admiral with curious eyes. "Admiral Vraise," Cole acknowledged, "I've read your service record. You've conquered 17 worlds for your empire. Your tactics against the Arconan Confederation are still studied in our academies." Vraise blinked in surprise. "You know of our campaigns?" "We know everything about the Empire," Cole replied. "We've been watching you for decades, preparing for this moment. While you dismissed us as primitive, we studied your technology, your tactics, your weaknesses. But how? Our intelligence. Your intelligence was exactly what we wanted you to see," Cole interrupted. "We showed you obsolete technology, divided nations, a species easy to conquer. In reality, Earth united against the Imperial threat long ago." The revelation staggered Vraise. The Empire had been manipulated, led into a trap by a species they had underestimated. It was humiliating, but also terrifying. What other surprises did the humans have in store? "You and your senior officers will be transferred to my ship," Cole continued. "Your crews will be held in secure facilities. None will be harmed as long as they cooperate." Vraise nodded, having no choice but to accept these terms. As he prepared to leave the Velker, perhaps for the last time, he took one last look at the bridge where he had commanded so many victories. Now, it would be remembered only for this catastrophic defeat. The human ship was a revelation. Its interior was sleek and efficient, with technology that matched or exceeded that of the Empire. Vraise and his officers were led to comfortable but secure quarters, treated with a respect they hadn't expected from their conquerors. Later, Vraise was escorted to what appeared to be an interrogation room. Cole was waiting, alone. "I hope your accommodations are adequate," Cole began, his tone civil but not friendly. "They are," Vraise acknowledged. "I must admit, I'm surprised by your hospitality. The Empire is not always so generous to its prisoners." "We are not the Empire," Cole replied simply. "Now, let's discuss what happens next." Vraise steeled himself. "If you're expecting me to betray Imperial secrets, you'll be disappointed. I'm not interested in secrets we already know," Cole said, surprising Vraise once again. "What I want to know is how the Empire will respond to this defeat. Will they send another fleet? Attempt diplomacy? Or perhaps they'll abandon you to your fate, as they've done with other failed commanders." The suggestion struck Vraise like a physical blow. Would the Empire abandon him? The thought had been growing in his mind since the surrender. The Empire valued success above all else. Failure was not tolerated, and he had failed spectacularly. "They will come," Vraise said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The Empire does not accept defeat." "Neither do we," Cole replied, leaning forward. "And when they come, we'll be ready. What you saw today was just a fraction of our capabilities." Vraise remembered the intercepted transmission. "The main fleet hasn't entered the battlefield yet." Had that been true? Did the humans have even more powerful forces in reserve? "What do you want from me?" Vraise finally asked, deflated. "Information," Cole said simply. "Coordinates of Imperial worlds, fleet movements, command structures. Cooperate, and you'll be treated well. Resist, and your situation will become less comfortable." Vraise faced the most difficult decision of his life. His loyalty to the Empire had been absolute, but that loyalty had been built on the assumption that the Empire was invincible, that it valued its servants. Now, facing the reality of defeat and potential abandonment, that loyalty felt hollow. "I need time to consider," he said finally. Cole nodded, rising from his chair. "Take all the time you need, Admiral. But remember, the longer you delay, the more time the Empire has to erase your existence from its records to pretend you never served them loyally for all these years." Left alone, Vraise contemplated his options. Cooper was right. The Empire would not acknowledge this defeat. They would erase his name from the records, attribute the loss to some natural disaster or unforeseen anomaly. His years of service would mean nothing. And so, over the following days, Vraise made his decision. He provided the humans with the information they sought. Not all at once, not without resistance, but gradually, as if each revelation was being forced from him. In reality, he had chosen survival over a loyalty that had proven one-sided. Meanwhile, in laboratories and command centers throughout the human fleet, preparations were underway. Vraise caught glimpses of their activities during his escorted movements through the ship. Engineers studying Imperial technology, tacticians analyzing fleet movements, weapons being developed that could counter the Empire's most powerful systems. The humans were not just defending themselves, they were preparing for a counterattack. They intended to take the fight to the Empire itself, to challenge its dominance in the galaxy. And based on what Vraise had seen of their capabilities, they might succeed. One day, weeks after his capture, Vraise was summoned to Cole's office. The human admiral was studying a holographic map of the galaxy, Imperial territories highlighted in red. "Your information has been invaluable," Cole said without preamble. "We've confirmed your accounts with other sources. The Empire is vulnerable in ways they don't even realize." Vraise said nothing, conflicted by his role in what was to come. "We're sending you back," Cole continued, surprising Vraise once again. "Back? To the Empire? To the throne world itself," Cole confirmed. "You'll be our messenger, Admiral Vraise. You'll tell them what you've seen here, what awaits them if they continue on their path of conquest." Vraise understood then. He was to be a living warning, a harbinger of the Empire's downfall. "They won't listen," he said quietly. "Some will," Cole replied. "Enough, perhaps, to sow doubt. And doubt is the beginning of change." The next day, Vraise was escorted to a small diplomatic vessel, unarmed and programmed with a direct course to the throne world. No escort, no protection, just a solitary ship carrying a defeated admiral back to the heart of the Empire. As he prepared to depart, Cole came to see him off. "One last thing, Admiral," Cole said, his expression serious. "When you tell them about us, about our capabilities, remember to mention that what you saw was only the beginning. Our main fleet has yet to be deployed. Let that thought keep them awake at night." Vraise nodded, understanding perfectly. The humans were playing a psychological game, creating fear and uncertainty within the Empire. Whether they actually had a larger fleet in reserve was almost irrelevant. The belief that they would be enough to paralyze Imperial leadership. As his ship departed, Vraise watched the human fleet recede in the distance. They made no move to follow, no attempt to track his vessel. Their confidence was absolute, and somehow that was more terrifying than any show of force would have been. The journey to the throne world was long and solitary, giving Vraise ample time to reflect on his life, his service to the Empire, and the profound changes he had witnessed. He thought about the civilizations the Empire had conquered, the species they had subjugated, always justifying their actions with claims of bringing order and progress. Had any of those worlds deserved their fate more than Earth? Had any of them been given a chance to prove their worth before being crushed under Imperial boots? Finally, the throne world came into view, a massive planet covered in sprawling cities, the heart of the Galactic Empire. As his ship approached, Vraise expected to be intercepted, possibly shot down by defensive systems. But to his surprise, he was allowed to land, his identity confirmed and acknowledged. The spaceport was crowded with Imperial citizens, soldiers, and officials, all going about their business, as if the Empire was as eternal and invincible as they had always believed. None of them knew about the catastrophe that had befallen the invasion fleet, the existential threat that now loomed on the horizon. As Vraise disembarked, he was met with curious stares and whispers. News of his return had spread quickly, though the details remained classified. He was escorted to the Imperial Palace, where the highest authorities awaited his report. The Grand Hall was filled with admirals, generals, and politicians, all eager to hear about the conquest of Earth, the addition of another world to the Empire's domain. Instead, they were about to receive news of the Empire's first defeat in generations. Vraze stood before them, his uniform no longer pristine, his posture no longer proud. He had rehearsed his words countless times during the journey, but now, facing the expectations of his peers, he found himself struggling to begin. Admiral Vraze, the Imperial Chancellor, spoke, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "We await your report on the Earth campaign." Vraze took a deep breath, knowing his next words would forever change the Empire's perception of itself and its place in the galaxy. "The invasion has failed," he said simply, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Earth could not be conquered. In fact, our fleet was defeated, and I stand before you as the sole survivor of the command staff." A stunned silence fell over the assembly, followed by murmurs of disbelief and outrage. "Impossible," someone shouted. "Our intelligence indicated they were primitive, divided." "The intelligence was wrong," Vraze replied, his voice gaining strength. "The humans are united, powerful, and technologically advanced. They anticipated our attack, countered our tactics, and neutralized our advantages." The murmurs grew louder, the disbelief turning to concern, then to fear as Vraze detailed the battle, the human capabilities, the catastrophic losses. "But surely this was just one battle," the Chancellor said, attempting to maintain control. "The Empire will respond with overwhelming force." "They're expecting that," Vraze warned. "They've studied us, prepared for us. And what we faced, what defeated us so thoroughly, was only their vanguard." He paused, letting the significance of his next words sink in. "Their main fleet hasn't entered the battlefield yet, and they're coming, not just to defend their world, but to challenge the Empire itself." Panic spread through the hall. Officials rushed to consult with each other, to access data terminals, to verify Vraze's account. The certainty that had been the foundation of imperial society for centuries was crumbling before their eyes. In the midst of the chaos, Vraze stood silent, watching as the reality of their situation began to dawn on the imperial leadership. The Empire had always seen itself as the pinnacle of civilization, the rightful ruler of the galaxy. Now they faced a species that had not only resisted their power, but had revealed the Empire's assumptions as dangerously flawed. As Vraze was led away to be debriefed in more detail, he caught fragments of urgent conversations, orders being issued for fleet movements, defensive preparations. The Empire was mobilizing, but there was a desperation to their actions now, a fear that had never been present before. Walking through the corridors of the Imperial Palace, past officials and citizens still ignorant of the crisis, Vraze felt like a ghost, a harbinger of a future that would forever alter the Empire's destiny. They had believed themselves invincible, had built their identity on conquest and dominance. How would they cope with the knowledge that they were not the most powerful force in the galaxy after all? That night, from the window of his quarters, Vraze looked out at the gleaming cityscape of the throne world. It was beautiful, a testament to the Empire's achievements and ambitions. But now, in his mind's eye, he could see it threatened, vulnerable in a way it had never been before. The humans were coming. Not today, perhaps not tomorrow, but they would come. And when they did, they would bring with them not just their weapons and technology, but a message that would resonate throughout the galaxy. The Empire was not invincible. It could be challenged. It could be defeated. As the night deepened, news of the defeat spread throughout the capital. Crowds gathered in public spaces, demanding information, reassurance. Military vessels began to leave orbit, heading to defensive positions. The Empire was preparing for war, a war unlike any it had faced before. Vraze watched it all with a detached sense of witnessing history unfold. His role was finished. He had delivered his message, fulfilled his final duty. What would happen next was beyond his control. In the distance, he could see the Imperial Palace, its towers reaching toward the stars. Once, it had represented the height of power and authority. Now it seemed like a monument to hubris, to the dangerous belief in one's own superiority. As dawn broke over the throne world, Vraze thought about Admiral Cole's parting words. Let that thought keep them awake at night. The humans understood psychological warfare as well as they understood technology and tactics. The Empire would now live with the constant fear of when and where the human fleet would strike, whether the reports of their capabilities were accurate or understated. The Empire had always used fear as a weapon against others. Now, they would know what it was like to be afraid. And that fear might accomplish what countless rebellions and resistance movements had failed to do. It might change the Empire from within. Vraise turned away from the window, from the sight of an empire in panic. His part in this story was over. The future belonged to others now, to the Empire struggling to adapt to a new reality, and to the humans who had revealed themselves as perhaps the most formidable species the galaxy had ever known. The final thought that crossed Vraise's mind before he departed from the view was simple but profound. This was only the beginning. The real war was yet to come. In the days that followed, the throne world transformed. Military patrols increased. Citizens were ordered to prepare for potential evacuation, and the Imperial Council remained in constant session. Vraise, once a celebrated admiral, now moved through this changed world like a specter, a physical reminder of failure that no one wanted to acknowledge. The official narrative began to shift. What had been a straightforward conquest became a strategic reconnaissance mission in public announcements. Vraise's defeat was reframed as a calculated withdrawal to gather intelligence. But behind closed doors, the truth was unavoidable. The Empire had encountered a species that could challenge its dominance. One evening, as Vraise walked through the Imperial Gardens, seeking solitude, he encountered an old acquaintance, Grand Admiral Taurus, the highest-ranking military officer in the Empire. Vraise, Taurus acknowledged him with a nod. I've read your full report. Is it really as bad as you've described? Worse, Vraise replied honestly. The humans' technology is advancing rapidly. By the time we mount another campaign, they'll be even stronger. Taurus stared at the distant horizon, where the first stars were becoming visible in the twilight. In all my years of service, I never imagined we would face such a threat. The Empire has always been inevitable. Perhaps that was our mistake, Vraise suggested. We believed our own propaganda. We forgot that other species could be as ambitious, as determined as we are. Taurus turned to him, his expression grave. The council is divided. Some want to launch an immediate, massive counterattack. Others counsel caution, even diplomacy. What would you advise? Vraise considered the question carefully. A few weeks ago, he would have advocated for overwhelming force, for crushing the humans beneath the Empire's heel. But now, having witnessed their capabilities, understanding their determination, he saw things differently. Negotiate, he said finally. The humans aren't bent on our destruction, at least, not yet. They defended their world, but they also showed restraint. They could have killed me, killed all our captured troops. Instead, they sent me back with a message. A threat, Taurus corrected. A warning, Vraise countered. They're telling us they're prepared to fight, but I believe they would prefer peace. On equal terms, not as subjects. Taurus scoffed. The Empire does not negotiate on equal terms. Then perhaps it's time the Empire changed, Vraise said quietly. Because the alternative might be worse than we can imagine. They parted without further words, each knowing that the Empire stood at a crossroads. The choices made in the coming days would determine its future, whether it would adapt or cling to old patterns that might lead to its downfall. As days turned into weeks, the atmosphere throughout the throne world grew increasingly tense. Military exercises became constant, with Imperial forces drilling for scenarios they had never before considered. Defense rather than offense, withdrawal rather than advance. The Empire had always been the aggressor, the conqueror. Learning to protect rather than attack required a fundamental shift in thinking that many struggled to accept. Vraise found himself consulted regularly, despite his disgraced status. His first-hand experience with the humans made him valuable, though many resented him for it. Some whispered that he had exaggerated the human threat to excuse his failure, while others suggested he had been compromised during his captivity, turned into a human sympathizer. The truth was more complex. Vraise had indeed been changed by his encounter with humanity, but not in the way his critics imagined. He had glimpsed a different way of existing, a society that valued innovation over tradition, cooperation over domination. The human success against the Empire had not come solely from superior tactics or technology, but from a fundamental difference in their approach to challenges. Admiral Vraise, a young messenger, interrupted his thoughts one morning. "Your presence is requested at the Strategic Command Center." Immediately, the urgency was unusual. Since his return, Vraise had been treated with a mixture of disdain and reluctant respect, but never with urgency. Something had changed. When he arrived at the command center, he found it buzzing with activity. Officers moved between stations with purpose, their expressions tense. At the center of it all stood Grand Admiral Taurus, studying a holographic display that showed the far reaches of Imperial space. "Vraise," Taurus acknowledged him without looking up. "We've detected anomalies in Sector 7. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database." Vraise felt a chill as he approached the display. Sector 7, a region that included several recently conquered worlds, civilizations that had fallen to the Empire in the past decade. The patterns matched descriptions from your report, Taurus continued, finally meeting Vraise's eyes. "Human technology." Vraise studied the data, his worst fears confirmed. "They're moving faster than I anticipated. These signatures suggest a significant fleet, not just reconnaissance." "Are they attacking?" Vraise asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Not exactly," Taurus replied, his voice tight. "They appear to be liberating." The holographic display shifted, showing footage from Imperial outposts. Human ships in orbit around conquered worlds, Imperial installations abandoned or destroyed, local populations celebrating in the streets. In some cases, there hadn't even been combat. Imperial forces had withdrawn rather than face what they now recognized as a superior enemy. "They're dismantling our outer territories," Taurus said, his voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Systematically, efficiently." "And our response?" Vraise asked. Divided, Taurus admitted. "The Council cannot agree on a strategy. Some advocate immediate counterattack. Others suggest abandoning the outer regions to fortify the core worlds. A few even propose opening diplomatic channels." Vraise studied the display, noting the precision of the human advance. They weren't rampaging or conquering. They were specifically targeting Imperial military installations while minimizing civilian casualties. It was a methodical campaign designed not just to push back the Empire, but to demonstrate an alternative to its rule. "They're sending a message," Vraise said finally. "To us, and to every species in the galaxy. They're showing that the Empire can be defeated, that our dominance isn't absolute." "A dangerous message," Taurus growled. "Only for those who refuse to listen," Vraise countered. "Admiral Cole could have destroyed our fleet entirely, executed our soldiers, sent our heads back as trophies. Instead, he sent me with a warning. Even now, they're offering Imperial forces the chance to retreat. This isn't just warfare, it's communication." Taurus was silent for a long moment, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. "The Emperor has summoned the War Council, all senior admirals and generals. You are to attend." Vraise raised an eyebrow in surprise. The War Council was the highest military authority in the Empire, convened only in times of extreme crisis. That a disgraced admiral would be invited spoke volumes about their desperation. "When?" he asked simply. "Now," Taurus replied. "En vrai." Speak truthfully, regardless of how the Council receives it. The Empire's survival may depend on it. The Imperial War Chamber was an imposing space, designed to awe and intimidate. Massive columns supported a domed ceiling adorned with murals depicting Imperial victories. The circular table at its center represented the Empire's unity of purpose, with the Emperor's throne elevated slightly above the rest, symbolizing his supreme authority. As Vraise entered, conversations hushed. Eyes turned to him, some curious, others hostile. He recognized the faces around the table. The Empire's highest military leadership, veterans of countless campaigns. None had ever tasted defeat until now. The emperor himself was present, a rare occurrence that underscored the gravity of the situation. Emperor Malthus XII, ruler of 1,000 worlds, was a surprisingly diminutive figure in person, his presence magnified by elaborate robes and the power he wielded rather than physical stature. Admiral Vraise. The emperor acknowledged him, his voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. You stand before us as both witness and warning, the first imperial commander to face this new threat. Your insights are acquired. Vraise bowed respectfully, aware that his next words would be scrutinized by the most powerful figures in the empire. I am at your majesty's service. Tell us, Admiral, the emperor continued, in your assessment, what are the humans' ultimate intentions? Do they seek to destroy the empire or merely to halt its expansion? A crucial question, and one Vraise had pondered extensively since his return. Neither, your majesty, he replied, causing murmurs around the table. Based on their actions, both in battle and after my capture, I believe they seek to transform the empire. Transform? The emperor's eyes narrowed. Explain. The humans value self-determination above all else, Vraise elaborated. They fought not just to defend their world, but because they reject the very concept of imperial rule. Their campaign in the outer territories shows a pattern. They're not replacing our authority with their own, but enabling local populations to govern themselves. Chaos, snorted General Dravis, a hawkish veteran known for his brutal suppression of rebellions. They spread chaos under the guise of freedom. Perhaps, Vraise conceded, or perhaps they offer an alternative to our model of governance, one that some species might prefer. The emperor leaned forward, his gaze intense. You speak dangerously close to sedition, Admiral. I speak the truth as I observed it, Vraise replied, meeting the emperor's eyes. The humans defeated us not because they were inherently superior, but because we underestimated them. If we continue to misunderstand their motives and capabilities, we risk further defeats. Silence fell over the chamber as the emperor considered Vraise's words. Finally, he turned to Grand Admiral Taurus. What are our military options? Taurus activated the chamber's holographic display, showing the current distribution of imperial forces. We have 3 viable strategies, Your Majesty. First, we can consolidate all available forces for a massive counteroffensive, attempting to overwhelm the human fleet through sheer numbers. The losses would be catastrophic, Vraise interjected, earning glares from several counselors. Second, Taurus continued, we can adopt a defensive posture, abandoning the outer territories to fortify the core worlds while we develop countermeasures to human technology. Showing weakness, General Dravis growled, encouraging rebellion throughout the empire. Third, Taurus concluded, we can pursue limited engagement while simultaneously opening diplomatic channels, attempting to negotiate boundaries rather than total victory. This option was met with outright scoffs from much of the council. The empire did not negotiate, it dictated terms. The emperor remained silent, weighing each option carefully. Finally, he turned back to Vraise. You have faced these humans, Admiral. Which approach would you recommend? All eyes turned to Vraise. His response could determine the future course of the empire and his own fate. The safe answer would be to advocate for strength, for the traditional imperial response of overwhelming force. But that path, he now believed, led to disaster. Diplomacy, Your Majesty, he said firmly, not from weakness, but from wisdom. The humans have demonstrated their capabilities, but they've also shown restraint. They seek to change us, not destroy us. We should engage with them, understand them, and perhaps learn from them. The chamber erupted in protests. Cowardice, shouted one general. Treason, called another. But the emperor raised a hand, silencing them instantly. A bold recommendation, Admiral Vraise, he said, his expression unreadable. Some might say too bold from one who has already failed once. Vraise accepted the rebuke with a slight bow. Failure has been my greatest teacher, Your Majesty. Before my defeat, I never questioned our methods or our assumptions. Now I see that adaptability may be more valuable than strength alone. The Emperor studied him for a long moment, then turned his gaze to the assembled council. We stand at a crossroads. The Empire has faced countless enemies in its long history, but none like these humans. Our response must be equally unprecedented. He rose from his throne, commanding the attention of everyone present. Grand Admiral Taurus, begin preparations for a defensive restructuring of our forces. General Dravis, I want detailed analysis of potential rebel activity in all sectors. If the humans' example spreads, we must be prepared. The council members nodded, accepting their assignments. Then the Emperor turned back to Vraise. As for you, Admiral Vraise, you will lead our diplomatic initiative. Since the humans saw fit to send you back to us, you will return to them, not as a defeated commander, but as an imperial envoy. You will seek to understand their intentions more fully and explore the possibility of coexistence. Stunned silence filled the chamber. To appoint a disgraced admiral as diplomat was unprecedented, either a sign of the Emperor's desperation or his cunning. I am honored by your Majesty's trust, Vraise replied carefully, but I must warn that the humans may view my return with suspicion. Precisely why you are suitable, the Emperor countered. They have already taken your measure, and you theirs. Build upon that foundation. But understand this, Admiral. While you speak of peace, we will prepare for war. The Empire will not be dictated to, even as we explore alternatives. With that, the council was dismissed. As Vraise departed the chamber, he felt the weight of his new responsibility settle upon him. He had been given a chance to prevent further bloodshed, to forge a new path for the Empire. But he harbored no illusions about the difficulty of his task. The humans would be suspicious, the Imperial hardliners opposed to any compromise. Days later, as Vraise prepared to depart on his diplomatic mission, he stood once more at the viewport of his quarters, gazing at the sprawling capital. The city seemed different now, its imposing architecture suddenly fragile, its eternal confidence shaken. For the first time in generations, the citizens of the throne world looked to the stars with uncertainty rather than ambition. A soft chime announced a visitor. Vraise turned to find Lieutenant Kors, his former tactical officer, standing at attention in the doorway. Lieutenant, Vraise greeted him surprised. I thought you had been reassigned. I requested to join your diplomatic mission, Admiral, Kors replied. My experience with the humans, limited though it was, might prove useful. Vraise studied the young officer, noting the determination in his eyes. The path we're embarking on carries significant risk, Kors. Association with me might not advance your career. Kors stepped forward, lowering his voice. With respect, Admiral, I'm not concerned with advancement. I've seen the reports from the outer territories. The humans aren't just defeating our forces, they're offering something new to the worlds we conquered. Something that makes them fight alongside their former enemies against us. Freedom, Vraise suggested. More than that, Kors replied thoughtfully. A vision of the galaxy where cooperation replaces conquest. It's compelling. Vraise nodded, recognizing in Kors the same transformation he had undergone. The first cracks in the imperial worldview that had defined their entire lives. Very well, Lieutenant. Your request is approved. But understand that we walk a narrow path. The Emperor expects diplomacy to fail, justifying the massive military response he's already planning. Our task is to prove him wrong, not just for the sake of peace, but for the future of the Empire itself. Kors saluted crisply. Understand, Admiral. As they prepared to board the diplomatic vessel, Vraise caught sight of Grand Admiral Taurus, watching from a distance. Whether he was there to support their mission or monitor a potential traitor was unclear. In the new reality facing the Empire, old certainties had crumbled, replaced by questions without easy answers. The diplomatic ship was small but elegant, designed to impress rather than intimidate. As it lifted off from the throne world, Vraise felt a curious sense of liberation. For the first time in his career, his mission was not conquest but understanding. The outcome remained uncertain, the challenges enormous, but he was no longer constrained by the imperial doctrine that had defined his life. As the throne world diminished behind them, Vraise thought of Admiral Cole's words, their main fleet hasn't entered the battlefield yet. Perhaps the humans' true strength lay not in their ships or weapons, but in their ideas, concepts of governance and cooperation that challenged the very foundations of imperial power. The Empire was indeed in shock, facing not just a military defeat, but an existential challenge to its identity. Whether it could adapt or would cling to its traditional ways remained to be seen. But Vraise was determined to explore the possibility of a new path, one that might preserve the best of the Empire while discarding its worst impulses. As the ship entered hyperspace, heading toward the region where human forces had been detected, Vraise prepared himself for what might be the most important mission of his life. Not to conquer or destroy, but to build understanding between two civilizations that had begun as enemies but might yet find a way to coexist. The galaxy was changing. The Empire could change with it, or be left behind. The choice, Vraise realized, would determine not just their future, but the future of countless worlds and species across the stars. And for the first time in his life, he embraced that uncertainty as an opportunity rather than a threat. The diplomatic vessel emerged from hyperspace near the edge of what had once been Imperial territory. The region had changed dramatically since Vraise had last seen it. Imperial monitoring stations had been dismantled, replaced by a loose network of independent outposts representing various species. Ships of designs he didn't recognize moved freely through space that had, until recently, been under strict Imperial control. Remarkable, Lieutenant Kors murmured, studying the sensor readings. Multiple species, working together without Imperial oversight. It should be chaos, and yet they seem to be thriving, Vraise finished. A confederation rather than an empire. Their arrival had not gone unnoticed. Within minutes, they detected several vessels approaching. A mixed group, including designs they recognized as human. "They're hailing us, Admiral," the communications officer reported. "Open a channel," Vraise ordered, straightening his uniform. This would be his first contact with humans since his departure from Earth, and much had changed. The screen flickered to life, revealing a face Vraise recognized immediately. Admiral Cole, his expression as stern and resolute as before. "Admiral Vraise," Cole acknowledged, showing no surprise at seeing him again. "The Empire's response is unexpected. A single diplomatic vessel rather than a battle fleet." "Times change, Admiral Cole," Vraise replied carefully. "As do perspectives. I come representing the Emperor himself, seeking dialogue rather than conflict." Cole's expression remained neutral, but Vraise detected a flicker of interest. "Dialogue about what, exactly?" "The future," Vraise said simply. "Ours, yours, and that of the galaxy we share. The Emperor recognizes that our traditional approach may require reconsideration." A slight smile crossed Cole's face. "I see our warning made an impression." "Your demonstration was most effective," Vraise acknowledged. "May I request permission to dock with your command vessel? These discussions would be better conducted in person." Cole considered the request, then nodded. "Permission granted. But understand that we take security seriously, Admiral. Your vessel will be thoroughly scanned, and you'll be escorted at all times." "Perfectly reasonable," Vraise agreed. "We come in peace, but trust must be earned." As the communication ended, Kors turned to Vraise. "He's cautious but not hostile." "That's promising." "Indeed," Vraise replied, "but we must tread carefully. The humans have every reason to distrust Imperial intentions, and we've been sent as much to gather intelligence as to negotiate. The path between honesty and duty will be narrow." Their vessel was directed to a docking bay on what appeared to be a massive command ship, unlike any Vraise had seen during his previous encounter with the humans. As they approached, he noted its design, efficient rather than ornate, prioritizing function over the intimidating aesthetics favored by Imperial architects. Upon docking, they were met by an honor guard of human soldiers, led by a woman whose insignia marked her as commander. "Admiral Vraise, Lieutenant Kors," she greeted them formally. "I'm Commander Reyes, Admiral Cole's Chief of Staff. If you'll follow me, the Admiral is waiting." As they moved through the ship, Vraise observed everything with keen interest. The crew was diverse, including not just humans, but members of other species, some that had been Imperial subjects until recently. They worked together with an easy coordination that suggested genuine collaboration rather than the rigid hierarchy of Imperial vessels. They were led to a conference room where Admiral Cole waited, along with several officers and what appeared to be representatives from non-human worlds. "Welcome aboard the Horizon," Cole said as they entered. "Our flagship, though we prefer the term cooperative vessel since our alliance operates on principles of mutual respect rather than command." "An interesting approach," Vraise commented, taking the seat offered to him. "And clearly effective, given your successes against Imperial forces. We find that people fight more effectively for a cause they believe in than one they're ordered to support," Cole replied. "But I suspect you didn't come all this way to discuss our organizational philosophy." "On the contrary," Vraise said, "understanding your values is essential to my mission. The Emperor seeks to know not just your military capabilities, which you've amply demonstrated, but your ultimate intentions toward the Empire." Cole exchanged glances with his colleagues before responding. "Our intention is simple: to end Imperial expansion and oppression. We don't seek to destroy the Empire, but to transform the galaxy into a place where all species can determine their own destiny." "A noble sentiment," Vraise acknowledged, "but one that fundamentally challenges the Empire's purpose and structure." "Precisely," Cole confirmed without apology. "The Imperial model of governance through dominance is outdated and unsustainable. The future belongs to cooperative networks, not hierarchical empires." The conversation continued for hours, moving from broad philosophical discussions to specific concerns about territories, resources, and security. Throughout, Vraise was struck by the humans' clear vision of a post-Imperial galaxy, not chaotic as Imperial propaganda had always claimed, but ordered according to different principles. As the formal meeting concluded, Cole invited Vraise to continue their discussion privately, in a small observation lounge overlooking the ship's engineering section. "You've changed, Admiral," Cole observed once they were alone. "When we first met, you were the embodiment of Imperial arrogance. Now you actually listen." "Defeat is a powerful teacher," Vraise replied wryly, "as is witnessing firsthand what we always dismissed as impossible, an alternative to Imperial rule that actually functions." Cole studied him thoughtfully. "And do you believe the Empire can change? Truly change, not just make tactical concessions while planning to resume expansion when we're no longer watching?" It was the question Vraise had been asking himself since his return to the throne world. "Some elements can," he said finally. "Others will resist until the end. The Emperor himself, I believe he recognizes the need for adaptation, though his vision of that future differs significantly from yours." "That's more candid than I expected," Cole remarked. "Candor may be our only path to peace," Vraise replied. "The Empire has existed for millennia, shaping countless worlds in its image. It cannot transform overnight, but it can begin a process of evolution." Cole nodded slowly. "Evolution rather than revolution. It's not what many of our allies would prefer, but it may be the most realistic path forward." "And your main fleet?" Vraise asked, unable to resist. "The one that hasn't entered the battlefield yet." A smile crossed Cole's face. "A useful fiction at the time, though I wouldn't discount humanity's capacity to surprise you again." As their meeting concluded and Vraise prepared to return to his vessel, he reflected on what he had learned. The humans and their allies offered a vision of the galaxy fundamentally different from the Imperial model, one based on cooperation rather than domination, diversity rather than uniformity. It was messy, complex, and imperfect, but it contained a vitality that the Empire, for all its power, had long since lost. Back aboard the diplomatic vessel, Kors approached him with a troubled expression. "Admiral, our mission parameters require us to provide regular updates to Imperial Command. What exactly should we report?" Vraise considered the question carefully. His official duty was clear: provide detailed intelligence on human capabilities, weaknesses, and intentions to help the Empire prepare for potential conflict. But he had glimpsed a different possibility, one that might save countless lives and perhaps even revitalize the Empire itself. "We will report the truth, Lieutenant," he decided, "but not all at once. Some truths the Empire isn't ready to hear." In the months that followed, Vraise became a bridge between two civilizations, one ancient and rigid, the other young and adaptive. He traveled between the throne world and the expanding federation of worlds that humans were helping to establish, carrying proposals, counteroffers, and gradually building the foundation for coexistence. Not everyone supported his efforts. On the Imperial side, hardliners viewed any compromise as weakness, any concession as betrayal. Among the Human Alliance, many remembered Imperial atrocities too vividly to trust any peace initiative. Yet slowly, painstakingly, progress was made. The Empire agreed to recognize the independence of worlds that had broken away, while the Human Alliance acknowledged the legitimacy of Imperial governance in regions where it remained unchallenged. Trade began to flow across these new boundaries, cultural exchanges were established, and gradually, fear gave way to cautious curiosity. 1 year after his first diplomatic mission, Vraise stood on the observation deck of a newly established neutral station, a meeting point between Imperial and Alliance space. Beside him stood Admiral Cole, both of them watching as ships from dozens of worlds moved peacefully through the sector. "A year ago, I wouldn't have believed this possible," Cole admitted. "The mighty Empire, accepting limits to its power. Necessity is a powerful motivator," Vraise replied, "as is the recognition that adaptation ensures survival." "And what about you, Admiral?" Cole asked. "Where do you stand now between two worlds?" Vraise considered the question, watching an Imperial cruiser pass peacefully alongside an Alliance vessel, a sight that would have been unimaginable before his fateful encounter with humanity. "I stand for the future," he said finally. "Not the Empire as it was, nor the Alliance as it might wish to be, but a galaxy where both can exist and perhaps, in time, learn from each other." Cole nodded thoughtfully. "A worthy position, though not an easy one to maintain. The most important positions rarely are," Vraise observed. As they parted ways, each returning to their respective domains, Vraise reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. From conqueror to defeated commander, from prisoner to diplomat, he had witnessed the transformation not just of the galaxy, but of himself. The Empire remained in shock, still struggling to accept the limitations of its power and the challenge to its worldview. But shock was giving way to adaptation, arrogance to a newfound humility. Whether this transformation would continue or falter remained to be seen, but the first steps had been taken toward a different future. And as for humanity, they had revealed themselves as not just a military force to be reckoned with, but as carriers of ideas that could reshape civilizations. Their main fleet might have been a tactical fiction, but their greatest weapon had proven to be something far more powerful than warships or technology: the capacity to imagine a different way of existing in the universe, and the determination to make that vision real. In the vastness of space, empires might rise and fall, but ideas, once released, could never be truly conquered.